Okay, in this video, we'll be sewing a straight seam at the 5/8 inch with a zigzag to finish the edge, which is how we sew most things in FCS class. So I have here 2 pieces of fabric, 2 pins, because my fabric is only about 8 inches long, and I have a pair of scissors and my fully threaded machine. The first thing to remember when you're sewing is we always sew everything inside out. So here I have 2 pieces of fabric, and it's a nice red buffalo check pattern. And what I want to do is place the pattern side, or the right side, together, and then align the edge where I'm going to sew. So since this is just a piece of scrap, I'm just making sure it has a nice even edge here. And what I'll do is pin the edges to keep them together. So pins always go pointing towards where we're going to sew. So I'm going to be sewing this edge, so I'm going to place my pin all the way through and then back up to secure the fabric. It's pointing right to that edge where I'm going to sew. I'm going to place another one about 5 inches away, push the pin all the way down, and then all the way up. So you can see here my fabric is pinned. The pin is pointing to where I'm going to sew, okay? And my fabric is right sides together, or inside out. To get this aligned on our machine, remember I'm already threaded and I already made sure it is not going to jam and it works fine. To get this aligned, I'm going to place the fabric on the machine, and I want to align the edge at the 5/8 inch. So the top edge of my fabric is aligned with the back of the presser foot, and I'm going to put this side where I want to sew on the line here that says 5/8 inch. So you have to look closely at your throat plate to see that you are at the correct seam distance. Once your fabric is aligned, you can hold onto your presser foot lifter, lower that presser foot onto the fabric, and you can see here I'm set at about 2.5. Anywhere from 2.5 to 3 is a good stitch length. And I'm also on the straight stitch because we want this to be nice and strong, and the straight stitch gives us the most strength on a not stretchy fabric. Okay, so to begin sewing, I'm going to turn my safety off, get my hands in safe position, and I'm pinching it here on the edge of the fabric, and then prepare my foot on the foot pedal, which is out of view for you. Every time we start, we need to start with a back stitch, so I'm going to go a couple stitches forward. That was about 4, and now I hold down the reverse button with my right hand. I'm holding the fabric with my left hand, and I'm going to go backwards or reverse to the beginning of the fabric. Okay, now that I've come to the beginning, I can continue forward on my straight stitch all the way to the end of my seam. So you can see here I have those pins in place. As we're going forward, I'm keeping my fabric lined up with the 5/8, and when I get close to a pin here, I take my foot completely off the foot pedal, remove the pin, place it on a pin magnet or pin cushion, and then continue to sew. So keep your edge on the 5/8, continue to sew down. When you approach the next pin, stop, remove the pin, and then continue. Now you can see at about this point, my hand is now touching that throat plate. That's a little too close. So I'm going to move my hand through the machine so that I can hold the fabric at the back and right here on the side away from that throat plate. And now I'm going to continue to the end of the fabric. When I get all the way to the end, I'm going to stop and back stitch to secure those stitches. So I hold down the reverse button, and back stitching is only for about 1/2 inch. So hold down the reverse, back stitch for about 1/2 inch, and that's it. To remove your fabric from the machine, make sure your needle is fully out of the fabric. Carefully raise your presser foot, and then use your hand to pull the fabric to the left out of the machine. If the fabric doesn't pull, it's just stuck in a stitch, and all you need to do is use that hand wheel to raise it or lower it and loosen that thread, and then you'll be able to pull the fabric out. Always trim your threads close to the fabric, okay, so that you leave those tails on the machine and your machine doesn't become unthreaded for your next line of stitching. So here you can see my slightly irregular 5/8 inch seam. You can see the stitching nice and clear on the wrong side of the fabric, and when we open this fabric up, you don't see any stitches, and you can see that that seam is very strong. In our next video, we'll talk about finishing this seam with a zigzag.